So this weekend, Alabama handled business against Missouri, pitching a shutout in a game that excited Alabama fans across the nation. And today, we've got to break it down. We need to talk about the things that stood out to me, but more importantly, we need to get into some bold takes that I have after watching this game that you do not want to miss. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Were you pleased with how Alabama handled business on Saturday? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And we're going to start on the defensive side of the ball. Listen, you pitch a shutout, that deserves acknowledgement, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And before anybody says, oh, well, Missouri was without their starting quarterback for most of the game, he tried to play, and even though he had an ankle injury coming into the game, it's not like this guy is Jalen Milroe 2.0. He's not an incredibly mobile quarterback, and they have incredibly gifted wide receivers on the outside. Even when they tried to do quick developing plays to Luther Burden, to those talented guys on the outside, Alabama was all over it. And even when the quarterback went down and Drew Pine came in, one thing that I was really impressed with is there were no busts on the back end. That doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Did you allow a wide receiver to get open or no? Regardless of whether a quarterback hit the wide receiver or even looked their way, the Alabama secondary to me had a really good game, regardless of quarterback play on Saturday. The simple question is, did you do your job? And the answer is equally as simple. Yes, the Alabama secondary did their job. And I think we're starting to see the development of these young guys. I mean, even a Damani Jackson. Damani Jackson may not be a true freshman, but we have always had to acknowledge that he's young in terms of experience. He hasn't played a ton of college football, but he is growing as the year goes on, as is Zabian Brown, as is Jalen Mbakwe. And Bray Hubbard had himself a day. This was something we talked about in the pregame with Sab being out, that everybody on the panel last Monday was talking about, hey, Bray Hubbard is more than capable. He's a very talented young man, has always been automatic in run support, and he's shown signs of being automatic in pass protection as well. Well, guess what? That's exactly what we saw on Saturday. His interception, I thought it was beautiful. The way he read the quarterback, broke on the ball, he flexed his ability to cover ground while being disciplined. That's awesome to see from a young player. So we are starting to see the growth of players on this Alabama roster. And we've talked about the secondary, deservedly so. They had multiple interceptions. Russaw got himself an interception. But this secondary was playing lights out football against wide receivers that are really darn good. So to circle back once again, I don't care if the wide receivers didn't have a quarterback that was competent at getting them the ball. My question is simple. Did the secondary have busts? The answer is equally simple. No, they showed growth, but as did the whole defense. Listen, I thought Alabama's linebackers played very well, but I thought defensively up front, something I said would happen absolutely did. LT Overton is converting close to getting home. And that's scary for any offense that Alabama is going to play because that guy is building upon each performance, and it was no different this week. He's already among the nation's leaders in quarterback pressure, and he continues to build upon the game before every time he steps out there. And I think that that's going to be a trend we see through the season. He's not done yet. This is a guy that switched positions. This is a guy that had to redo his body. And we are seeing the fruits of his labor. He is an immensely talented young man, and I'm really fascinated to see what the rest of the season holds for him. But there are many other players on this Alabama roster that I think are showing the development that the season has brought. Jordan Renaud, I continue to be impressed with. Every time he gets in the game, I'm left thinking, man, I'd love to see some way to get 90 more touches. But the good news is Jamarian Latham had himself a day. We talked about LT Overton having himself a day. Jordan Renaud had himself a day. They all play Bandit. So that bandit position has really grown as the year has gone on, and now, in my opinion, they're playing some of the best football on the roster. And that's impressive because I thought this weekend a lot of the roster played some of the best football in terms of cohesiveness and a complete game, especially on the defensive side. Tim Smith continues to build upon performances. Tim Keenan is absolutely who we thought he is. James Smith continues to be a menace on the interior. That's a guy that, if we look back at the history of Alabama defensive linemen, we have seen time and time again a guy show the flashes, show the signs that James Smith is showing, and then when it is their time to be the guy, they take off. I predict that's what we're going to see from James Smith, because every single game he gets in, it looks like he has learned something and is applying those lessons learned in this new scenario. But he's still very young. He is still incredibly young. He's still going to grow. That's a name that I think Alabama fans are going to be very excited to see in the future, especially a season like next season, to see what he's able to continue doing, because I think once he has a chance to be the guy full time, he's going to explode on the college football scene. Alabama fans know of him. SEC fans know of him. But I don't think it's going to take too long before college football fans as a whole know the name. We talked about the linebacker play being better, and that certainly extended to the Wolf position, where Alabama was not only to get able to get pressure, but on that fourth down stop, Rob did a great job of beating his guy, causing chaos. And then you had the interception, which leads me to the last thing I want to talk about defensively, and that was the fourth down stop. And here's my bold take, ladies and gentlemen. That stop, that moment, could be the catalyst for Alabama finishing the season stronger than we've seen them play all season. Why do I say that? Because despite what you have seen on Twitter, football and momentum go hand in hand. Momentum is absolutely real in sports. And what we saw on Saturday was a defense that was playing lights out all game. And then when the second and third stringers got in, Missouri was able to move the ball. Why? Because Missouri still has capable pieces. I know Nasty Nate didn't play, but Marcus Carroll is still a very good running back. I talked about that in the preview video. Roberts is still a very capable running back. Missouri runs the football down the field. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, just over 80 yards of their rushing yards for the game came on those drives, specifically that drive. And whenever they got to the goal line on 4th and goal, Alabama called timeout. And starters went back in the game because it meant something to them. It would have been just as easy. In fact, it would have been easier to leave your second and third string guys out there and say, okay, this is a building moment for them. This is a learning moment for them. Let's see if they do it. If not, no big deal. We're already beating them. We're beating them handily. They're not coming back. But that's not what Alabama did. Alabama put their starters back out there because they wanted to prove we're not letting this happen. To me, that was a bounce back moment. And those are the type of moments that can become catalysts to major change during a season. And I think very strongly that's what we saw. I was very impressed with that moment, and I think that Kane Womack deserves a lot of praise. I think Malachi Moore deserves a lot of praise. I think that the leaders on this team deserve a lot of praise. I think the defense as a whole deserves a lot of praise. Because I was incredibly encouraged by the performance I saw from them on Saturday. Even though you didn't have Cook in the whole game, you still had very capable running backs, which you handled, and you still didn't let wide receivers run free. Whether a quarterback hit them or not, you didn't let it happen. And when they did try and get a guy like Luther Burden, who will be a first-round pick, by the way, the ball in the quick game, they were all over it. So now let's turn the page. Let's talk about Alabama's offense. Because Alabama's offense started a little bit slow, but they were able to find their way as the game went on. And to me, that's encouraging. One of the things I've often said is it's great when you win a football game, you exit with the win. In fact, we had this conversation after the Georgia game. You win the football game, You exit with a win, but then when you go back to the drawing board and you start self-evaluating, what do you get? Lessons. You did make mistakes in that game. So even though you played well, even though you got the win, there's room to grow in a manner that's far more encouraging than if you were to take a loss. Now, maybe the loss creates more fire, but that's when we get into the conversation we just had about the defense getting that stop, not letting Missouri on the board. I think that creates far more fire, far more momentum than any loss Alabama has taken this year. So for Alabama's offense, you start slow, but one of the things I did love is that they were getting the running backs involved. They really leaned on the running game, and this is something we talked about. Allow your offensive line to lean on these defensive guys, because then when it gets into the fourth quarter, they're not going to want to stop it anymore. And as the game went on, you started seeing the running game get more successful, and more successful. And one of the things I loved was Richard Young breaking off that long run. Because I think in that run, the way he attacked that hole, he was proving to the coaching staff he should get a few more carries. Now, in order to do that, you need to get Justice and Jam a few more carries, right? But at the same time, I think Richard Young is an incredibly capable running back, and I loved that he got that opportunity and capitalized on that opportunity. But one of the things this does, whenever you're able to establish the running game like that, it builds confidence. It builds confidence within the offensive coordinator that he knows, hey, if I call the run, my team's going to go out there and execute. It builds confidence for the offensive line that just went out there and had a great time executing. It builds confidence for the running backs. Justice Haynes had a highlight reel touchdown. Ran someone straight over. And then when we get into Jalen Milroe, I continue to see people being critical of Jalen Milroe. And make no mistake, my contention here isn't that you can't be critical of Jalen Milroe. But I also think that it needs to be within the realm of reason. Let me explain. Jalen Milroe on Saturday started the game a little bit slow, like the Alabama offense did, but as the game went on, really started looking better. Started making those throws again. And in fact, in this game, made several throws that I thought were very impressive. One throw to Kobe Prentice, it looked like Kobe Prentice pulled up on the route a little bit, almost that he didn't think that it was going to come his way. And by the time he did, he was running with outstretched arms for nearly 10 yards. I think if he hadn't have pulled up on the route, that would have been a long touchdown. Another one to Ryan Williams, people were saying he missed so bad. Well, even I myself, I must admit, because listen, everything we do here is honest. I myself thought that Jalen Milroe missed real bad until you go to the sidelines and Kalen DeBoer is saying something to the effect of, hey, you're not supposed to sit on that route. You were supposed to keep going outside. He thought you were going to keep going outside. That's what you needed to do, and that's why he threw it there. So then it turns out that's just a simple miscommunication. We see that from the best quarterbacks, even in the NFL. Just not being on the same page as a wide receiver. That happens. Certainly that happens. And if you're sitting here telling me it doesn't, as respectfully as I can, I'm going to ask, how much football have you watched? That happens fairly consistently, especially with a wide receiver who's a true freshman. That's no big deal. I don't think that anybody should blame Ryan Williams, but that's just football. Those things happen. Heck, how many times a game do you think it occurs where an offensive lineman just isn't quite in sync with the rest of the offensive line, maybe thought his job was something else, and whether the play is successful or not, maybe he down blocked when he shouldn't have. These things happen. It's football. You have so much going on, there's bound to be a miscommunication. That miss was a miscommunication, if we take what Kalen DeBoer said at face value. But as the game went on, the offense started to catch fire. And you can say, oh, well, they needed an interception. Okay. I don't understand that line of argumentation. They needed an interception to get going. You mean that they needed momentum from complimentary football to get going? Spare me. I don't understand that argument. They needed complimentary football to get that momentum going. Okay. We haven't seen that before. Of course we have. Of course we have. So I'm not sitting here saying you can't be critical of Jalen. There were some throws that I'm sure he would love to have back. There were moments he would love to have back. There were misses that were unfortunately on him. No doubt. That's why I started the offensive segment saying I think this is a game that you can exit with a win knowing you built upon your performance as the game went on, but you can also learn from it. And in my opinion, that's a very positive thing. But as the game went on, Milroe started getting in rhythm. And one of the things we talked about is some people were asking me why I thought Milroe was still in the game when Alabama was up so much. To me, the answer was simple. He found his rhythm, and the coaching staff is trying to keep that rhythm going to get confidence up. Not only for him, but for everybody. And I think that's what Alabama achieved. So my bold take, we've already said it, this game was a catalyst game for Alabama going forward. This game is going to be a game that we look back on when the season's over and saying that's where Alabama changed the fate of their season, changed the trajectory of their season. Against Missouri on that 4th and goal where the starters came back in on defense to pitch the shutout. And by the way, Alabama has 8 shutouts versus top 25 teams since 2010, which is 3 more than the next 3 teams combined. It seems like a pretty good stat, but I can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.